concept of certificate deposit is, let's say there is a bank and it needs a fund for a short time, and short time maybe range from less than 1 year to less than 3 years. So, we will talk for which bank it is less than 1 year, for which organization is less than 3 years. So, the concept how it goes is, let us say a bank needs fund for a short duration. Now, first it goes to the Reserve Bank of India in terms of India, but in any other country it is basically the central bank of its own country. So, in our case in India, central bank is our Reserve Bank of India. So, first the bank goes for the Central Bank of India, and there is a fixed specific rate at which it lends the money. Now, even the requirement is not suffice, then it moves to other banks. Okay. Now, other banks, from other banks also the borrowing bank got the money, but it is not sufficient. So, the next choice is it is going to get the money from the corporate. Okay. Now, the transaction between the bank and the corporate for the short duration is done based on this commodity called certificate of deposit. Now, what happens here is the bank asks the corporate, like, I need this much amount of money for this much duration, and that duration will be less than 1 year. Okay. Now, corporates gives the bank all the amount that is required. Now, in return bank gives this commodity called certificate of deposit. Okay. Now, what this certificate of deposit says, it have all the not the conditions, there is no condition, it is just the terms and rules that the bank or the borrower has to stick to. It is basically the amount that has to be paid, the duration that has to be paid, what kind of promissory note is associated with this kind of transaction, because there are two types of promissory note that could be associated with this kind of commodity, which is certificate deposit. Now, the two types of promissory note is Hussain promissory note and demand promissory note. Thus, what is the difference? So, if the transaction between the bank and the corporate is demand promissory note, in that case whenever the corporate asks for its money back, the bank has to pay. But in case of that was the demand promissory note. Now, coming to Hussein's promissory note, the corporate cannot ask for its money anytime that it wants. There is a fixed duration before which, or on the there is a due date basically before which the bank has to pay the corporate, which is known as Hussain promissory note. So, even if the corporate has given the full amount, let us say 10 lakhs to the bank, now after the for 1 year, okay, now after the 6 months, even if the corporate needs the money, it cannot ask the bank, because the transaction happened based on Hussain promissory note. Okay. So, any commercial bank which is eligible for this, it should be like the scheduled commercial bank, and the maximum tenure for which it can buy this, or which to hold this money, is 1 year. Now, coming to other financial institution, it can hold for the maximum maturity of 3 years. So, this was one point, that it has to be stick for the certification of deposit. And the second rule is, any amount that is involved in this transaction should be the multiples of 1 lakh. So, it should not it should be like minimum 1 lakh, and if more, then it should be multiples of 1 lakh. So, that was two condition. And yeah, so here is one more thing. So, if certificate of deposit is given by the bank to corporate, that okay, after this date I will return your money back. If tomorrow, like say before 1 year itself, if the corporate again needs money, for sure it cannot get it from the bank in case of Hussein's promissory note, but corporate needs money. What it can do, can it put this Hussain promissory note as a collateral and get some loan? No. So, promissory note cannot be considered as a collateral for getting the loan. So, that was one more point to be considered. And there is one more type of bank called RRR, which is specifically meant for rural development. Those banks are not applicable for this kind of commodity or instrument, which is certificate of deposit. Now, the last point that we need to note is, certificate deposit is one of the instrument which is used to do the transaction in the money market. Okay. Now, if you don't know what is a money market or capital market or any other terminology that is used in this video, you can either watch the playlist of this dpoint finance, or you can mention in the comment section that this specific terminology I did not get. What is the benefit that certificate of deposit has when accrediting corporate is giving amount to the bank? So, here when the bank is getting the money, it is basically getting the money as the discounted value. and when the time comes to repay back to the corporate, it's going to be repaid back at a face value. So here the difference between the discount value and the face value is, we can call it as a interest value, or the difference is what the benefit the corporate is having who is crediting the bank.